Real quick, just an introduction. So my name is Jason Pinto. I'm always scared to put my face, so I use one of the best cars ever made. So that's absolutely how you spell my name. Any Twitter fans here? Anybody on Twitter? Okay. So if you have any questions afterwards or would love to connect, that's my Twitter handle, Jason Pinto. So if I do good, bad, terrible, feel free to put that right on Twitter, my name. I'd love to hear the feedback. Real quick, if you have any questions about our companies, it's actually real easy to find us. We're right across in the marketing pavilion, Interlink 1 and Grow Socially. But today we're not here to talk about that. We're going to talk about different ways that we can integrate print with other channels. So certainly if you've walked around the show for these past couple of hours, QR codes are everywhere, right? If you don't have one in your booth, it almost seems silly, right? Social networks, right? We all know everyone's on Facebook or Twitter. We're going to talk about different ways that print can integrate with that. And then lastly, how you can put it into a whole multi-channel campaign. But first, why integrate? So I bet you're probably thinking the next 5 slides, I'm going to show charts that show maybe print volumes or print shipments. And those are definitely important. But I was thinking, we're printers, we're in the print industry, we come to a show and people tell us we have to change, we have to integrate with something different. So I was thinking to maybe put us in the right frame of mind. We talk about the movie industry, right, for a second, or just movies in general. There's been a lot of classics over the years, I mean, comedies, serious movies, but they worked then when we saw them. But if technology that exists today existed then, that movie wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't make any sense. So to completely not think about print for a second, I thought of a few movies and how technology would change them, right? So the classic Home Alone, right? Hilarious. But think about if smartphones existed back then. The kid wouldn't be missing and not be able to get in touch with his parents, but instantly the parents would be able to text them, or he'd call them or text them. Right? They could not make that movie today and drag it out for 2 hours because smartphones have changed the way we communicate with people in a matter of seconds. Another one, the movie The Breakfast Club, right? If you think about that, the 5 different people had to sit together in detention. They all bonded, right? But today, what would happen? We'd all be on their phone, right? Talking with their like-minded friends or the people that weren't there in detention. So really, Facebook and other social networks have changed how we interact with people. And then the last one, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right? I mean, who even knows how to get anywhere nowadays? We don't need to, right? Because we can look at our phone, we plug in GPS, Google Maps. So the point really is that if you think about how technology has changed or would have to change a movie, then there's ways for us to look at maybe how, when we offer print services, we can use technology to maybe make the printed piece better. Or print can be used to make the Facebook page better. And so that's what we're going to try to go into a few different ways. My first one is mobile, my favorite. Rumor on the internet is that I might actually have a QR code tattoo. So just to kind of put that out there, because that shows I really am passionate. I do believe in them. They make print interactive. Just maybe can I ask real quick, how many people have used a QR code for themselves to promote their own company? That's awesome. How about for clients? Okay, thank you very much. So a couple things on QR codes. When it comes to maybe selling them or why we need to use them, I just pulled this stat, or this chart recently. Nielsen put it out. US people that own a mobile phone, in July, they said that 40% of mobile phone owners own a smartphone. I think that number, not only will it continue to get higher, I feel like it is higher. I bet if I asked how many people in here have a smartphone, I bet it would be 90%, right? I mean, once we have one, it's really impossible to ever go back, right? It just wouldn't happen. A couple different ways that it can be used. One, on direct mail. I don't know, maybe you know, but this summer, the United States Postal Service offered a discount for people to put QR codes or mobile barcodes on the mail. And so the report came out last week, and it was that nearly 1/3 of all standard mail in those 2 months, June or July and August, contained a QR code. That's great, I think, for printers because big stores did them, Bed Bath & Beyond, Macy's, other stores like that. That's increasing exposure for QR codes. So even if people didn't scan it when they saw it in the mail, I think that putting it out in that many places that often is only going to help people become curious, want to know what it is. Here's an example of how one printer did it great. They were trying to get people to register for their event. It was kind of a seminar, open house that a printer was putting on. They had the personalized URL. If we think about those were the hottest thing ever, right? Maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. A lot of people really bought into pearls. And they're still around, but they're definitely not as hot maybe as they once were. But in addition to the pearl, they offered the QR code. So 2 things maybe to think about. Where do you think the QR code pointed to? Questions? Yeah, right, the pearl. So it pointed to the pearl, but they did a huge difference. When people went to the regular landing page, they saw maybe 5 or 6 questions. They had to enter their name, they had to verify their mailing address, a couple other things like that. There was a video that talked about the event. When people scanned the QR code, they also went to a page where they could register, but it was a much simplified mobile registration page. So I think that's one of the biggest things is, if you're going to make a QR code, you can't just point it to the same landing page, but really to create a mobile version. Here's a case study from a printer that's actually here at the show, Custom XM. So they actually publish stats, because I know a lot of people are saying, okay, you're telling us to use QR codes, but do they work? Does anybody scan them? So he shared his stats from a recent campaign. So he had the same thing. He had a pearl, and then he had the QR code. 31% of the people accessed it via the QR code, and then 24% actually did submit the form that they got to from their mobile phone. I think it's a great case study because they weren't maybe pushing this event to printers, people who are very maybe curious or aware of QR codes. It was pretty much a general piece, so a wide variety of consumers and prospects, and I think those are decent numbers. So one great thing that he did is he tracked the QR code. And so that's a mistake that a lot of people can make, is it's easy to make a QR code, but if you're not going to track how many people actually scanned it, that's a huge loss. So that's just one thing. The only way these stats are possible, the only way for us to know if it's working, is to make a QR code that can be tracked so you can see if it's working or if people are still going to the pearl or some other response mechanism. Here's a couple of best practices, right? So you can see the big difference maybe just visually between the QR codes. One application of them is to maybe point them to a map, right? Because if we think about on our phones how it's great, we've got the map application. If you were to try to make a QR code and you wanted to use MapQuest directions, if you see the big URL from MapQuest, it's what, 80, 90 characters? If I was to make a QR code with just that, you can see how dense that QR code is. Now, people still might be able to scan it, but the smaller you make that code, or if the lighting's not perfect, you're going to run into trouble. So complete best practice is to shorten the URL first, because the less data inside that QR code, the easier it will be to scan. And so if it's a shorter URL, you can actually make it a lot smaller. The smallest that I would recommend is probably 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. I have seen some people, even Disney, went down to maybe 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch on their gift cards, and a lot of the newer phones, like an iPhone 4, can scan that successfully. But an iPhone 3, you're not going to be able to do that. So how can you shorten the URL? Certainly there's plenty of free URL shorteners out there, but when you look for a QR code generator, definitely look for that as an option. Will it shorten the URL for you? If so, that's great, because then that means they're probably going to be tracking it as well, and it's going to make this QR code a lot easier to be scanned. Here's another best practice, and I will say that when I first started using them, I completely blew this. I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a QR code, I'm going to stick it on our print ad, and just plop it in there, and people will know what it is and they're going to scan it. And our first few ads completely bombed. We think maybe not just that people might know what they are, but we have to give them some kind of gentle encouragement. So simple text near the QR code to accomplish what? So the first one on the left, scan the QR code with your smartphone to learn more. So for one, it indicates, hey, you're going to need your smartphone to do something with this. And then it kind of answered the why, to learn more. That's kind of vanilla, but I think it still was somewhat helpful as opposed to just putting that QR code in the corner of your ad. On the right, I love this one. It was an ad for Firestone in a local newspaper, and the text below the QR code says, price tires now with your mobile phone. So, right, that's great. So no matter where you're looking at that ad, with your phone, if you're interested in tires, you have the need, you don't have to go inside, turn on your laptop. You take out your phone, scan it, and you'll be able to get pricing information right on your phone for those tires. So just a couple of little examples. I know you add to the printed piece by putting the directions in, but I think it absolutely can increase the awareness and the response rate in the end. And then this one we kind of touched on, but it's so important because your corporate website, you can make a QR code for that today, no problem, right? We can go do that in 2 seconds on any generator. But most likely your site is not going to look great on those few inches of screen. So we have to make the initiative to make mobile sites, whether it's for our own corporate website, whether it's for our clients that we're making QR codes for. And there's a few ways to create mobile websites. I know some in the audience are doing that now. Just a couple of options I'll provide. One is if you have a programmer, someone who can do maybe HTML on staff, they can probably figure it out. But I realize that's not always a resource that we have. So there absolutely are applications out there that will let you build mobile websites in just a matter of minutes. A few things you'd want to do with the mobile website once you have the tool to do that for clients. I know the client might love the text they have on their website and all the pictures, but it's just not going to work. You just can't take all of that content and hope it'll have a great impact on the mobile phone. So really to work with the client and say, we've got to pick out what would someone on their phone really want to find. So limit that, whether it's directions or contact information, but to try to really just get the most important, compelling information on the mobile website. On a mobile website, you can provide static information, which I kind of show here, pictures and offers and text, but you can also create forms and landing pages. So if maybe you are having success with pearls right now, you can really do the same concept on a mobile site. You can make a form that asks a couple of questions and maybe ask someone to input their name and email. And then with that, you're going to be able to collect the response from the QR code and still drive a lead for your clients. And this one that we've hit on as well, so the importance of tracking and measuring and testing. I know I've seen a lot of QR codes around the show that aren't being tracked. And that's just a mistake, right? Because why put a QR code on your beautiful ad or sign if you have no idea if it's working, right? So what can you know from a QR code? You don't know the person's phone number, right? I hear that question a lot. Can I capture who's scanning it? And no, you can't capture that. The only way you really could is if you made a personalized QR code for that person. So if you're doing personalized URLs, you could take that list, upload it to a generator, and then actually make or get a personalized QR code for each person. So in that scenario, you could actually tell your clients, Joe Smith scanned the QR code, Frank Jones went to his Pearl. So that is one way that you could know, but for most part, we're not going to be able to know who is scanning the QR code. So if you kind of think about it as just a way, it's a different response mechanism, and you can tell your client the overall. So how many people are scanning, you can tell maybe what device they're scanning it from, so the iPhone or the Android, things like that. There are some people out there who say that you can find out the location of someone who scanned it. I promise that is not the 100% truth. And it's really because most of us on our phone, we don't give up our location, say, right away. So it's really based on maybe the tower that the phone is going through at that point, or even how the phone was registered. So there are systems out there that'll maybe let you see the location, but please don't go to your client and say, hey, I can pinpoint the exact city or the exact street location that someone scanned this QR code on. But what you can do is make a unique QR code for maybe different geographical regions. I'll even maybe simplify it. So if a store is going to roll out QR codes on their brochures or their signage, you can make unique QR codes for New York versus Boston. And so when you send the collateral to the New York stores, they'd at least be able to track, okay, from this general area, that's where the scans are coming from. You could do the same for your collateral. You could make one QR code for the front of the brochure, one on the back. They might both go to the same place, but you can track them differently if you make them as two unique QR codes. So just a kind of a different way to think about it, but that's how you can get maybe the physical location geographically, and then even on the printed piece itself. This one is one of my favorites, right? So social networking. So how do we integrate print with social networking? First, many of us take it the other way. We think about social networking stealing print business. People that do a lot of email think social networking is stealing their email business because a lot of content is on social networks, right? And that's true. That's not going to slow down. People are still going to use those channels to promote their offers. But guess what? A lot of the people, your customers that are making a Facebook page or a Twitter page, a lot of them are making them, and then maybe they're not having success. And it's probably because how are they promoting it? And maybe they're only promoting it through Facebook, right? So that's kind of hard maybe to attract new followers. So one of the best ways I'm seeing companies make money with print is to tell your clients, hey, print will drive traffic to the social networks. So a couple different examples actually. Let me just skip to this one. So here, this is a local dentist. They redid all of their collateral. So that they got all excited, they made a Facebook page, and then as soon as you walk into their store, they've got signs like this. I think it's a great sign. It promotes the Facebook URL. It's got the logos. So that way, when you're in the retail store on your printed collateral, they're promoting the page, right? So they're driving traffic. Another way they do it is when you leave, right? When you get your card for your next appointment, they put that on the back of their cards to check into this business on Facebook, or it could have been Foursquare, or whatever location service they might have been using. But all of their printed collateral have been changed to try to now drive traffic to that social media site. One other example I did want to look at, think about postcards. When's the last time maybe you sent a postcard? I'm sure, when's the last time we've received a postcard? It's certainly less than what it was a couple of years ago. But there's a couple of companies and apps that are finding ways to create print business based on all of the content we're creating with our phones. So if you think about your phone, you're snapping pictures everywhere you go. You can share those on social networks, on Snapfish, or whatever it might be. This company, Postagram, which is a great app, what they did is you go to the app, you can easily browse your library, say of pictures, then you select, okay, who do you want to send it to? So you input their name, their mailing address, then that's it. You can put a maybe custom message. Postagram will then create a postcard, slap your picture right in there, and then mail it for you. I think they charge maybe 99 cents right now, a postcard, so I don't know how much money they're making. But I think what they're doing great is they're encouraging people to, that content that we're all creating with our phones, make it easy for people to print it. So if you think about maybe a web-to-print storefront, people can customize their collateral. If there's a way to maybe let people easily upload photos, or maybe even if you can integrate with Facebook a little bit so people can access their photo library from a social network, I think that's a little way to maybe use some of that content and get it on a printed piece. But I would definitely encourage everyone, though, if you have got an iPhone, Postagram is an awesome app. And it's a good concept, I think, for printers maybe in general. Here's another way to print in social media. What do we have on our business cards nowadays? Right, it's changing. Maybe we've got QR codes that point us to maybe your business card info. I think another good way, though, is start promoting our social networks, our channels that we're on our cards. So here's an example. He's got the Twitter ID, his Facebook, his LinkedIn. So one, hey, that creates awareness because maybe it's easier for someone to send me a tweet when they meet me as opposed to calling. But providing those options. And then with the QR code, to really point someone to a mobile site that provides all of that information. So then that way they scan the code, they maybe see your picture, they can then quickly, they choose how they want to contact you. So just a little way to maybe integrate social and where we are on the printed pieces that we're distributing. And then just on this last one, so how do we make money, say, from print as mobile keeps growing or social networks keep growing? And the biggest advice and the biggest success stories we see are for people that don't just sell the one thing, right? So they don't just sell the postcard, but now they're really asking their clients questions. So what is this postcard for? So it's for a seminar, right? So we're printing this to help drive registration. Well, the way to start integrating print with other channels and getting more business is to try to point out ways that they can use maybe email or maybe social networks to try to further promote that seminar. And so that's one of the biggest ways that as printers look to maybe offer more marketing services, that don't just try to do the one and done thing, but if you can start to get people in, we can help you with the full campaign with integrating print. I think that's one of the best ways to increase the revenue that you do get. And then finally, this slide I know has a lot going on, but it really all comes down to maybe the client's, the website in the end, and the different ways to maybe get content created and distributed. And so I really like this slide because if you think about maybe your client's website or yours, if we start embracing all the different ways that it can be distributed, so across Twitter or Flickr or YouTube, and the printed component, I think that's going to be the best way because a lot of people are blogging nowadays, and all that content lives online and it's good. But I guarantee you there's someone out there with a blog that would love to see it printed, or maybe they convert it into a book of some sort. If we can find ways with our hardware and software to print those not too expensive, I feel like so much of that online content, the blogs, needs to be on a printed page. It can have a far-reaching impact. So if you see your clients creating a lot of content on the web, if you can try to maybe pick those opportunities to say, hey, we can really extend the reach of what you're creating, which is great, onto the printed piece, I think that's another way to maybe drive some of that print business. So just maybe some of the final takeaways. I know there's going to be technology that replaces QR codes, right? There's companies here that are already talking about what's next. One thing to pay attention to is near-field communications, NFC. It's definitely not here yet because most phones don't support it, but it's absolutely one thing to keep your eyes on. But to me, QR codes are absolutely the best way right now to help your client say, this printed piece is great, but a whole bunch of your audience has a smartphone. We can help you reach them by incorporating the QR code, following some of those best practices. Social media, print can help drive traffic. Don't be afraid to pick on your clients. Oh, you've got a Facebook page. You're not going to do a postcard or a calendar this time. Point out maybe how many fans they have or things like that. Don't be afraid to call people out on that because in the end, more fans, more traffic is good for them. And when we can show examples as to how print can help them accomplish those goals, I think it's a way to make a little business. And then the last one, we all talk about it, right? It's great to go buy software that helps us do QR codes or social networking, but beyond just buying, it's really taking the time to make a strategy as to how you're gonna effectively implement it. So that way we don't just make a QR code, slap it on a piece, and then have no idea how many people scanned it. But taking the time to maybe create that little bit of a marketing strategy ahead of time can really benefit. So that's actually all we have for slides, but if anyone has any questions on QR codes or anything like that, I'd love to answer either here or after the presentation. So, all right, thank you everyone for attending.